The darkness descended upon the Stirling estate like a heavy, merciless shroud, swallowing the last ray of sunlight that dared to peek through the immense windows. An oppressive silence, broken only by the distant echo of a neighbor's dog bark, settled where the almost imperceptible hum of state-of-the-art appliances and the perfectly calibrated air conditioning once reigned. The blackout was not gradual, but an abrupt, violent cut that plunged the grand and imposing property, the stage for Alexander Stirling's isolation, into total and unexpected gloom. It was as if the mansion itself, with its classic architecture and immaculate garden, was taking a deep breath, preparing for a secret that could no longer be contained by the light. Sarah Miller, with the mop still in her hand and the bucket of bleach beside her, felt her heart pound in her chest. The shock paralyzed her for an instant. The image of that luxurious environment plunged into complete shadows was almost surreal. She had always performed her duties with a discretion bordering on invisibility, moving through the opulent rooms of the Stirling estate like an efficient shadow, tending to the cleaning and organization with a dedication that went beyond mere salary. For Sarah, every corner of that house was a testament to others' wealth and her own effort to support her daughter. But at that moment, the darkness brought not only the lack of light but a chilling shiver that foreshadowed something more. Suddenly, a tall, shadowy figure emerged from the gloom of the main corridor, his heavy footsteps echoing on the polished marble. It was Alexander Stirling, the reclusive millionaire whose fortune was as vast as his solitude. His eyes, even in the dimness, seemed fixed on Sarah with an almost accusatory intensity. He did not need to say a word. The tension in the air was palpable, an invisible thread of distrust that always hung over the few employees of the estate. Alexander, tormented by past traumas and a profound loneliness that made him skeptical and at times unjust, did not hesitate. His voice, when it finally broke the silence, was laden with a coldness that reflected years of isolation and an almost pathological mistrust. "Sarah, what happened here?" he asked, and the question was not a search for information but a pronouncement. "You are the only one who was near the fuse box today. This is not a coincidence." The accusation was a harsh blow to Sarah's dignity, and she felt her blood run cold. Negligence? Sabotage? The words echoed in her mind like whips. She, who had always worked with the integrity of one who knows the value of every hard-earned penny, was being accused of something so vile. Perplexity and despair danced in her eyes, but Alexander seemed blind to it. He had already formed his opinion, and Sarah's truth, her resilience, and her effort to merely survive and provide the best for her daughter, Lily, were irrelevant in the face of his ingrained distrust. The injustice was palpable, heavy as an anchor in her chest, and she felt her throat tighten, unable to formulate an immediate defense. "Mr. Stirling, I swear I don't know what could have happened. I was cleaning the living room, as always. I never touched anything related to electricity," Sarah managed to stammer, her voice choked, her heart beating fast. "I would never do something like that. My daughter is here." The mention of Lily seemed not to sway Alexander's conviction. He merely waved his hand, a dismissive gesture that hurt her even more. "This is unacceptable, Sarah. I will have to investigate thoroughly. But for now, you are the primary suspect." As the tension thickened, little Lily Miller, with her 7 years and an innate curiosity, was there, observing everything. Her large, expressive eyes, accustomed to unraveling the small mysteries of the world, scoured the environment with an attention that adults blinded by the conflict seemed to ignore. She held a worn rag doll, her inseparable companion, and felt her mother's pain, a sharp pang in her childish chest. The oppression of that place, which to her had always seemed like a fairy tale castle, now revealed itself to be suffocating, heavy, dark. Lily smelled the polishing wax, mixed with the jasmine scent from the garden that drifted through the half-open windows, and something more subtle, a smell of mold and old dust coming from a specific corner, a smell that did not match the impeccable cleaning standard of the Stirling estate. As Alexander continued to interrogate Sarah, the girl in her innocence noticed something strange. A small, almost imperceptible crack in the wall behind a massive bookshelf, where the dust seemed to accumulate differently. as if the air there did not circulate in the same way as in the rest of the room. Was it a minuscule detail, an architectural quirk, or a flaw in the cleaning? Her small fingers, with the typical curiosity of her age, slid along the wall, feeling the cold texture of the carved wood. The crack seemed to hide something, a secret whispered among the shadows that the blackout had intensified. Lily did not understand Alexander's accusations or her mother's pain, but her childlike intuition guided her. She felt that the darkness was not merely the physical absence of light, but a curtain concealing a much greater truth, about to be revealed. And ironically, it would be this small observer, this unexpected source of truth, who would begin to unravel the mystery that hung over the Stirling estate. A mystery that linked the present blackout to an ancient crime, and her mother's innocence to the dark secret of the cruel Edward Stirling. The destiny of Sarah and Lily, and Alexander's own redemption, were about to be rewritten, beginning with that moment of darkness and injustice. Alexander Stirling's voice, laden with an authority both cold and unyielding, tore through the heavy silence that had settled like a shroud upon the vast Stirling estate. It reverberated ominously through the labyrinthine corridors, still largely enshrouded in partial gloom, as the faint, jaundiced emergency lights struggled in vain to dispel the utter darkness. The air, already thick with the tenacious, humid embrace of a New England summer night, grew even more suffocating with the palpable tension emanating from the reclusive magnate. His eyes, previously lost in distant, shadowed contemplation, now fixed upon Sarah Miller with an unwavering intensity that seemed to bore into her very soul, seeking to unearth a confession. "It was you, wasn't it? There is always a problem when something is amiss," Alexander declared, his tone devoid of mercy. "This blackout, it is no mere coincidence." His voice, though not raised to a shout, possessed a chilling resonance. The oppressive stillness of the sprawling environment amplified every syllable, sending the damning accusation echoing with spectral clarity through the Stirling estate's opulent, antique-filled halls. The profound humiliation struck Sarah like a corporeal blow, an invisible stinging slap that compelled a crimson flush to creep up her neck and flood her face, igniting a sharp, agonizing pang within her chest. In her early 40s, with skin etched by the relentless sun and years of arduous, unceasing labor, she had long since learned to swallow much, to stoically bear the immense weight of single motherhood in a land where the daily struggle for survival was a perpetual, unforgiving reality. Yet her inherent dignity, a steadfast and unwavering shield, was something she would never, under any circumstance, lower without a resolute fight. "Mr. Stirling," she began, her voice choked and trembling with a volatile cocktail of emotion and profound frustration, "I swear to you I do not know what you are speaking of." She struggled to articulate her defense. "I was in the kitchen, diligently finishing Lily's dinner, when suddenly everything plunged into darkness. I did not touch a single thing, nor did I perform any action that could possibly have caused this catastrophic outage." Her hands, calloused and rough from countless hours of scrubbing and cleaning, gestured faintly, almost imperceptibly, in a desperate attempt to clutch at the credibility that was so cruelly being denied her. Desperation, raw and palpable, danced wildly in her eyes, a silent, poignant plea for justice. But Sarah's truth, fragile and unsupported, seemed to dissipate into thin air before Alexander's unyielding, unquestionable authority. He, in his own deeply entrenched pain and corrosive skepticism, had long since erected insurmountable walls around himself, shielding him from empathy and external perspectives. The scarcely a dozen staff members who had gathered cautiously in the grand, shadowy hall, drawn by the unsettling commotion and the pervasive lack of power, observed the escalating scene with a complex mixture of prurient curiosity, overt apprehension, and a silent, ingrained resignation. They were gardeners, stoic security personnel, and other members of the extensive cleaning staff, all diligent laborers, much like Sarah herself, and all acutely aware of the mansion's implacable, deeply ingrained hierarchy. No one, not a single soul, dared to intervene. At the Stirling estate, an imposing bastion of old money privilege nestled within the affluent enclaves of New England, the master's word was an immutable law. That of the employee, however, was often relegated to a mere faint whisper on the wind, effortlessly muffled and obliterated by the crushing weight of power and immense wealth. It was a cruel, vivid tableau of social inequality, where the unquestioned decree of the opulent and influential invariably superseded that of the working class, truth or evidence notwithstanding. Sarah felt the oppressive weight of their collective gazes, the contained, hushed whispers, the humiliation scorching her chest with an agonizing intensity, a bitter, searing sensation that made her long to simply vanish from existence. It was like a melodramatic soap opera unfolding before her, she thought, with a bitter mixture of irony and profound pain, but utterly devoid of glamour, possessing only the stark, unvarnished cruelty of reality. Lily Miller, a small girl of only 7, instinctively shrank back a little further behind her mother's trembling legs, feeling an uncomfortable lump tighten painfully in her young throat. Her large, inquisitive eyes, which typically brimmed with a lively, mischievous sparkle, were now visibly wet with unshed tears, fixed with an unwavering, fearful gaze upon Alexander's stern, unyielding face. She did not comprehend the entirety of the complex, accusatory words being exchanged, but the raw, unbridled fury in the man's voice and the profound, crushing sadness in her mother's eyes were as clear and unambiguous as the purest spring water. Fear, cold and insidious, coupled with a deep sense of powerlessness, swiftly invaded her small being. It was a painfully familiar sensation, one she unfortunately knew too well. Watching her steadfast mother battle relentlessly for survival, striving to protect the delicate, fragile bubble of happiness they had painstakingly constructed together, through so much sacrifice and arduous effort. The inherently ponderous atmosphere of the Sterling estate, which already at times felt profoundly oppressive to the sensitive young girl, with its grandiose, echoing corridors and a quietude that bordered on sepulchral, now became utterly unbearable. An instinctive, powerful need for immediate escape, to distance herself from the suffocating negative energy that seemed to visibly drain the air and spirit from her beloved mother, propelled her to take small, hesitant steps backward, slowly retreating from the heart of the distressing scene. With her innocent, childlike mind instinctively seeking refuge, Lily began to tentatively explore the more secluded corners of the magnificent Sterling estate, places that were ordinarily strictly forbidden to her, but which, in the pervasive confusion of the blackout and the complete distraction of the adults, now seemed mysteriously and irresistibly inviting. Her small bare feet, usually accustomed to the cool, unadorned floors of their modest Stamford home, now felt the imposing chill of polished marble and the luxurious, intricate weave of Persian rugs, which felt like exquisitely soft clouds beneath her tiny toes. The walls, towering and undeniably imposing, were lavishly adorned with ancient, stoic portraits of Alexander and Edward Sterling's esteemed ancestors. Heavy, intricately woven tapestries and dark, formidable heirloom furniture filled the spaces, objects that on normal, sunlit days never failed to fascinate her with their curious forms and the rich, imagined histories they seemed to hold. But now, amidst the encroaching partial darkness and the almost unbearable tense silence, these very walls seemed to guard even deeper secrets, whispering hushed tales that only she, with her unblemished innocence and acute, childlike acumen, could possibly hear or truly understand. Her nimble, curious fingers, small yet remarkably perceptive, glided methodically over the cold, exquisitely ornate surfaces, meticulously tracing the intricate reliefs of a heavy brocade wallpaper that enveloped one of the East Corridor's most ancient walls. The texture under her fingertips was undeniably rich, adorned with elegant floral patterns that repeated in endless, hypnotic succession. But then, quite abruptly, a subtle indentation, a texture that felt distinctly, discernibly different, seized her unwavering attention. It was not a mere flaw or a simple imperfection, but rather something clearly deliberate, an interruption almost imperceptible within the patterned continuity. Lily's innate curiosity, pure and utterly devoid of malice, was sharply piqued. She gently pressed the precise point where the texture visibly changed, applying the small, determined force of her entire body, and to her utter astonishment, felt a faint, almost imperceptible give. A near inaudible click, akin to the soft, aged sound of an ancient lock disengaging with a whisper, echoed softly into the profound silence of the sprawling mansion, mercifully muffled by the increasingly distant murmurs of the agitated adults in the main hall. A narrow sliver of a door, ingeniously concealed, now opened, revealing a discreet, almost imperceptible aperture amidst the intricate, elaborate design of the wall. The door itself, expertly crafted from dark, heavy wood and meticulously painted to blend seamlessly and perfectly into its immediate surroundings, stood as a masterful work of architectural concealment, ingeniously designed to remain utterly unnoticed by even the most discerning eye. Had it not been for Lily's exceptionally keen perception and remarkably small stature, which placed her at the precise, crucial level to discern the subtle, minute imperfection, this hidden portal might truly never have been discovered by anyone. The sliver widened just enough for the curious little girl to tentatively peek through, revealing a narrow, profoundly dark and heavily dust-laden corridor beyond. A distinct, pervasive scent of aged mildew, mingled with the heavy, stale aroma of ancient, time-forgotten things, emanated from within, a potent fragrance redolent of long-buried secrets, carefully preserved for decades. The faint flickering glow emanating from the staff's handheld lanterns, which were still attempting in futility to restore full power to other distant parts of the sprawling house, did not even remotely reach that shadowed, secluded recess, rendering it even more profoundly mysterious and irresistibly inviting to an intrepid, childlike mind. The child's unblemished innocence, utterly devoid of the inherent cautionary notion of danger that an adult would undoubtedly possess, propelled her forward with an almost ethereal courage. To Lily, this was merely another intriguing mystery to unravel within the grand, enigmatic Sterling estate, a thrilling game of hide-and-seek played out with the perplexing complexities of reality, an adventure truly worthy of a cherished fairy tale, yet subtly tinged with an underlying suspense that only children, in their boundless wonder, can both instinctively feel and simultaneously, with effortless grace, disregard. Little Lily, with bated breath and wide eyes, did not perceive the weight of history resting upon the rusty doorknob of the hidden door. For her, this was merely the portal to another stage of her imaginary adventure, a challenge her childlike bravery accepted without hesitation, as if it were a grand treasure hunt. With a tiny push from her hand, the old wood yielded with a drawn-out creak, a muffled lament that was lost in the silent vastness of the Sterling estate. A sliver of light, coming from a crack in the main corridor, crept through the gap, revealing a piece of almost palpable darkness, a mysterious invitation to the unknown. The girl, without a second thought, slipped inside, her steps feather-light on the floor that seemed to have been untrodden for decades, imagining herself an explorer as in animated cartoons. The air inside was dense, heavy, like a dusty blanket that stifled any sound or scent coming from outside. A strong aroma of mold, old paper, and long-stored wood mingled with a strange, almost sweetish fragrance that Lily could not identify. It was the scent of abandonment, of time stopped, of sealed memories, a stored smell that evoked things forgotten at the back of a closet. The faint light accompanying her barely managed to pierce the gloom, revealing only silhouettes and dancing shadows that stretched across the corners of the hidden chamber. It was no ordinary room, not one seen in soap operas or decor magazines. The disorder was evident, but not the disorder of an inhabited place. Rather, it was a space abruptly sealed, frozen in time, as if life had been suddenly torn away. Antique furniture, covered by white sheets resembling silent spectres, lined the walls, while cardboard boxes, some dented and others precariously stacked, occupied the center of the room. A thick layer of dust covered everything, like a grey veil protecting the secrets kept there, and rays of light filtering through cracks made tiny dust motes dance in the air, creating an ethereal and melancholic spectacle. Lily, with her fearless innocence, felt no fear, only a growing curiosity. To her, this was a true treasure to be discovered, a perfect setting for a treasure hunt worthy of an adventure film she watched on TV, perhaps a miniature Indiana Jones. Her bright eyes scanned the surroundings, seeking something to catch her attention, a hint that there was something magical there, like the tales her mother Sarah read to her before bed. The girl began to move among the boxes, her curious fingers touching the dusty surfaces. She opened one of the boxes, revealing a stack of old photographs in sepia and black and white. Some were torn in half, as if someone had tried to erase a face or a moment, an act of desperation or rage. In others, scribbles made with a pen, perhaps by an impatient and angry hand, disfigured the smiles and gazes, transforming faces into unrecognizable blurs. Lily, without understanding the gravity of those erased images, scanned them, seeking some familiarity. There were faces that seemed young, others older, but none she recognized from the portraits scattered throughout the estate, nor from family albums Alexander kept in his study. In another box, she found yellowed documents with cursive letters that looked like drawings to her childish eyes. Contracts, letters, perhaps even an old newspaper, with news that no longer made sense for today's world, speaking of events long forgotten. The paper, dried by time, released an acrid smell that mingled with the mold. Lily flipped through some, without being able to decipher the tangle of words, but the texture, the faded color, all seemed to tell a silent story, a plot only adults could understand. She found no toys as she had hoped, no dolls or toy cars, which left her a little disappointed, as her initial plan was to find something to play with. But then, her eyes were drawn by a discreet, almost imperceptible gleam, coming from beneath a sheet that covered a side table, like a point of light in the darkness. With a quick tug, Lily revealed the object. It was an antique sterling pocket watch, made of a metal that seemed like aged gold, with intricate arabesque details and a central stone that reflected the dim light with a soft, mysterious, almost hypnotizing glow. It was not a toy, but for Lily, its beauty was even more captivating, something out of a fairy tale, a princess's treasure. The pocket watch was attached to a thin chain, and the girl picked it up carefully, feeling the cold weight and polished texture in her hands. There was something engraved on the back, initials she couldn't read, but seemed important to her, like a secret to be kept. That was a real treasure, she thought, and her childlike mind already imagined her mother Sarah's joy seeing it. Perhaps it was a gift for her, a special find to brighten the day after so much work at the estate. With the pocket watch clutched in her palm, Lily decided it was time to return. That place, despite being fascinating, was beginning to feel a little too somber for her imagination, and the adventure, however thrilling, had its limits. She took one last look around, memorizing the scene of disorder and mystery, before slipping out of the hidden room, closing the door with the same care she had opened it. The muffled creak once again sealed the secret, leaving the chamber enveloped in its own time bubble, untouched and forgotten. Upon emerging into the main corridor, Lily found herself facing a scene that strongly contrasted with her silent adventure. Alexander Sterling and Sarah Miller stood a few feet away, Alexander's voice a contained murmur, yet charged with a tension the little girl could feel in the air, almost like distant thunder. Sarah, arms crossed, maintained a dignified posture, but her face betrayed the weariness and injustice weighing on her shoulders, an expression Lily knew well when her mother was worried. Alexander, in turn, seemed more exhausted than angry. Still clutching the small object the girl had given him, Alexander felt the weight not merely of the metal fragment in his palm, but of an accusation that, with each passing second, seemed more baseless and cruel. The image of Sarah, her eyes downcast and her dignity unmarred even under the condemning gaze of all, hammered at his conscience like a discordant bell. He slowly knelt, drawing closer to Lily, whose innocence shone on her small, curious face, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within the millionaire's chest. Alexander's voice, usually grave and imposing, softened into an almost unrecognizable whisper, as if fearing any louder tone might shatter the delicate truth about to unfold. "Lily," he began, his heart tightening, his breath caught in his throat. Where did you find this, my angel? Can you tell me?" The girl, without any malice or notion of the moment's gravity, pointed her tiny finger at a wall that, at first glance, appeared solid and ordinary. "There, Uncle Alexander. There's a hidden door. It's a room no one uses. Everything was very old and dirty inside. It looked like no one had been in there for a very, very long time." Each word from Lily struck Alexander like a lightning bolt, dissipating the thick fog of his initial accusation against Sarah. a hidden door, a room no one used. The Sterling estate was immense, filled with rooms he himself barely knew or visited. But the idea of a place so well camouflaged, so deliberately concealed, ignited an alarm in his mind. He felt a shiver trace down his spine, a chilling premonition that had nothing to do with the ambient temperature. The purity and frankness of Lily's childhood were a source of truth as unexpected as it was overwhelming. "And what else was in there, my little one?" he pressed, his voice still soft, but with a growing urgency he could barely conceal. His eyes, previously fixed on the girl's face, now shifted to the indicated wall as if they could see through the plaster and paint. Lily, with the richness of detail only an observant child could possess, described the hidden room. There were some old boxes, some strange clothes, some yellowish photos, and some things that looked like broken toys, but they weren't. They were like pieces of wood and metal. And there was a lot of dust, Uncle Alexander. A lot of dust. And a peculiar scent, sort of musty, you know? Mom wouldn't like to see the mess. She made a playful grimace, unaware that her detailed description painted a somber tableau in the millionaire's mind. "I didn't think anyone should be in there. It seemed like a place of secrets." "A place of secrets," Alexander repeated, the phrase echoing in his mind. The image of Sarah, humbled and silent, resurfaced in his memory with overwhelming force. The way she had looked at him, not with anger but with a resigned sadness, as if she already expected judgment. A wave of shame and regret washed over him, burning him from within. He had been so blind, so quick to judge, so caught up in his own past pains and traumas, that he failed to see Sarah's dignity and integrity. He had accused her of something so vile for a blackout that now, he realized with terrifying clarity, was neither an accident nor a maintenance failure. The blackout's connection to something far larger and darker, now pointing directly to his own brother, Edward, was undeniable. The object in his hand, a small electronic device with severed wires, the description of the hidden room, the scent of mold and secrets, everything coalesced in a macabre fashion. Sarah was innocent of the blackout incident. That was crystal clear. But the truth behind the hidden room and the object was even more disturbing. Alexander felt a chill course through his spine as he connected the dots. The blackout had not been accidental. It was not an overload, nor a fault in the old wiring of the Sterling estate as he initially supposed, or as Edward had so conveniently suggested. No, the blackout could have been an orchestrated distraction, a smokescreen to cover something, perhaps to allow someone to enter or leave unnoticed, or for something to be moved or hidden. And the hidden room with all those dusty objects and the evidence Lily described without knowing what they were was the perfect hideaway, a vault of secrets Edward wanted to keep away from everyone's eyes. The things that looked like broken toys could be parts of a device, evidence of a scheme, or even tools of a crime. Lily's revelation not only irrefutably exonerated Sarah, but ignited a dangerous flame of distrust in Alexander, a flame that threatened to consume the little piece he still possessed. His own brother, Edward, the ever impeccable, the ever present, who seemed so concerned with the family's image, the one who always advised him to keep his distance from people like Sarah, using the excuse of maintaining order. The one who seemed to have a particular interest in keeping everything under control at the Sterling estate. Alexander's mind began to spin into a spiral of suspicion. The old crime, the evidence, the blackout as a smokescreen, everything fit Edward's cold, calculating figure. He had been deceived, manipulated, used as a pawn in his brother's dirty game. The feeling was that of being punched in the stomach, a treacherous blow from where he least expected it. The Sterling estate, once his refuge, now felt like a cage, a labyrinth of lies and secrets. He looked at Lily, at the innocence in her eyes, and then at the object in his hand. It was not just a piece of metal. It was the key to a truth that could shatter his family, yet also the chance to redeem the injustice he had committed against Sarah. From that moment, Alexander knew he could no longer hide in his reclusion. He felt compelled to investigate his own family, to unearth secrets that could prove fatal. The quietude of the Sterling estate would be broken, and the truth, however painful, would be exposed. The battle had only just begun. The news of the discovery, born by Lily's innocence and confirmed by Alexander's astonished gaze, swiftly permeated the hushed corridors of the Stirling estate, reaching Edward's ever-attentive ears. Within hours he manifested, his imposing presence filling the grand foyer with an aura of feigned cordiality that barely concealed the tension and irritation simmering beneath his impeccably tanned skin. He greeted Alexander with a calculatedly casual embrace, a smile that never quite reached his eyes, even as his mind already raced, meticulously orchestrating strategies to deflect attention from Lily's revelation. "Alexander, my dear brother, I heard some rather peculiar stories circulating," Edward began, his voice polished, yet imbued with a subtle inflection that implied the peculiarity originated with Sarah and Lily. He then turned to Sarah, who stood beside Alexander, adopting an expression of feigned concern. "Sarah, isn't it? What an unfortunate situation, this blackout. But from what I gather, little Lily possesses quite the imagination. Wouldn't you agree? A hidden room? Sounds like something from a motion picture, pure childhood fantasy." His icy blue eyes, cold as a New England winter, swept over Sarah and Lily, who instinctively recoiled slightly behind her mother. The insinuation was unmistakable. Lily's account was a fabrication, a clever ploy to divert scrutiny, or perhaps a scheme orchestrated by Sarah herself. Edward understood that Alexander, despite his initial distrust, was susceptible to influence, particularly when the honor of their family and the Stirling name were at stake. He drew nearer to Alexander, placing a hand on his shoulder in a calculated gesture of fraternal solidarity. "Alexander, my dear fellow, you understand the way of the world today. There are many who perceive an opportunity and seize it without a second thought. A housekeeper, a child. It is the quintessential tableau for those seeking to portray themselves as victims, or perhaps to extract something. Wouldn't you concur? I do not question Sarah's good intentions, of course, but one must be a realist. Perhaps she felt unduly pressured after the blackout and, who knows, might have even encouraged the child to discover something to redirect attention from herself." Edward's words were subtle venom, distilled with masterful precision, meticulously planting the insidious seed of doubt within Alexander's mind. Alexander, however, knew his brother, was acutely aware of his manipulative prowess and the intricate web of deceit he was capable of weaving to safeguard his own vested interests. A shiver of dread traced Sarah's spine as she overheard the veiled accusations, feeling trapped by the villain's calculated froideur. Lily, with her keen innocence, perceived the malevolence in Edward's gaze and tightly clutched her mother's hand as if to shield her. Alexander, however, was no longer the same man who had initially accused Sarah of the blackout. The truth that Lily had unraveled, Sarah's inherent vulnerability, and the very darkness of his own past that the hidden room had unveiled, had begun to dismantle the formidable barriers of his skepticism. He observed Edward, noting how his brother's eyes conspicuously avoided his own, the subtle clenching of his jaw. The veneer of a respectable businessman was fracturing, and Alexander, with a newfound piercing clarity, began to discern the fissures. "Edward, what Lily discovered is not fantasy. It is evidence. And this narrative is not about opportunism, but about what you have concealed for years within that room," Alexander retorted, his voice unwavering, surprising even himself. The direct mention of the secret caused Edward to blanch. The forced smile vanished, replaced by an expression of barely contained fury. "Evidence? What utter nonsense! Do you truly believe I would heed the words of a child and a housekeeper? Alexander, awaken. We are discussing the Stirling reputation. Our legacy. Will you truly allow these individuals to tarnish our name over some outlandish tale?" Edward's pressure was intense, a palpable weight in the opulent air, yet Alexander knew he could no longer ignore the truth. The estate, once a sanctuary for his solitude, now felt like a grand stage for the epic clash between verity and falsehood, between innocence and inherent cruelty. He had been blind for far too long, allowing his brother's insidious influence to shape him, but Lily's radiant light had now illuminated the darkest, most hidden corners of his own soul. Still, Edward was not one to relinquish control easily. Days bled into weeks, and the antagonist's pervasive presence within the Stirling estate became a relentless torment. He comported himself as though he were the rightful owner of the sprawling property, issuing directives to the staff, conducting momentous phone calls at an audible volume to assert his power, and, at every conceivable opportunity, casting disdainful glances and venomous remarks towards Sarah and Lily. He treated them as egregious interlopers, as if their very presence was a personal affront, and Alexander keenly perceived the escalating tension between them. One afternoon, as Sarah assisted Lily with her homework in the estate's cavernous library, Edward materialized. "Sarah, I need a word with you." "Alone," he stated, his tone unequivocally authoritative. Sarah felt an icy chill traverse her spine, but she calmly asked Lily to wait. "Look, Sarah, let us be frank," Edward began without preamble, once Lily was out of earshot. "I am aware you are attempting to capitalize on this situation. Alexander is a naive soul, tormented by his past, and you and your daughter are perfectly suited to manipulate such a man. But I am not Alexander. I discern your machinations, and I will not permit you to dismantle my family's reputation. Depart from here, take your daughter and leave. I will provide you with a generous sum to vanish from our lives and never again utter a word about what you discovered here." Sarah met his gaze, her eyes brimming with a potent blend of dignity and righteous fury. "I am manipulating no one, Mr. Sterling. I am an honest woman, and my daughter is an innocent child. What Lily discovered is the truth, and the truth cannot be bought or silenced." Edward scoffed, a dry, disdainful sound. "Ah, the truth, and how poetic. But the truth has a price, Sarah, and you lack the means to pay it." "I do. And I will ensure that you and your daughter are perceived as the opportunists you truly are. I will have you expelled from this estate, and I will see to it that no one else ever employs you. You and your daughter will be cast into the streets, utterly destitute." The threat was brutal, unequivocally cruel. Sarah felt panic constrict her chest, yet her unwavering resilience forbade her from yielding. "You will not succeed. Alexander will not permit it." "Ah, Alexander. He will thank me for ridding him of your ilk. He is still my brother, and family always comes first. Prepare yourself, Sarah. Your sojourn here has reached its inevitable conclusion." That day marked a devastating rupture. Edward, leveraging his considerable influence and inherent cruelty, meticulously orchestrated a series of events designed to defame Sarah and Lily. He disseminated insidious rumors among the estate staff, insinuating that Sarah had pilfered valuable heirlooms and that Lily was a troublesome, mendacious child. The atmosphere within the Sterling estate became utterly untenable. Alexander, though he did not fully believe his brother's fabrications, felt ensnared in a convoluted web of intrigue. Nevertheless, witnessing Sarah's profound suffering and the fear etched in Lily's eyes, the newfound light in his desolate life was the catalyst he so desperately needed. He recalled his own protracted solitude, how Edward's deceit had isolated him for years. Now he saw the same cruelty being directed at Sarah and Lily, and he could not, would not, permit it. Alexander knew there was no turning back. He had to confront Edward, not merely to protect Sarah and Lily, but to finally emancipate himself from the shackles of the past and the suffocating shadow of his brother. Night descended upon the Sterling estate, heavy and laden with an ominous silence. Alexander summoned Edward for a confrontation in the primary study, the very chamber where, years prior, their father's will had been read, an event that irrevocably altered both their lives. The atmosphere was palpably charged with foreboding tension. "Edward, it is over," Alexander began, his voice low, yet imbued with an unyielding resolve. "I know everything, not merely about the hidden room, but about your transgressions. The blackout was a mere pretext for you to attempt to obliterate the evidence Lily discovered. You forged documents, embezzled funds from our father's company, and were directly responsible for the ruin of several smaller ventures, casting blame upon innocent third parties, all to inflate your share of the inheritance. You systematically destroyed the lives of honest individuals, which is precisely why our father became so utterly reclusive before his demise. He uncovered your deceit, and you manipulated and threatened him into preserving your secret." Edward emitted a cynical laugh, a hollow sound that failed to reach his frigid eyes. "Ah, Alexander, you are so utterly predictable. Do you truly believe you will incriminate me with the testimony of a mere child and a housekeeper? I command a formidable cadre of attorneys, extensive contacts. I am untouchable." "No longer," Alexander countered, revealing a digital voice recorder clutched firmly in his hand. "I have recorded all your threats against Sarah, your blatant attempts at bribery, and your thinly veiled confessions. Furthermore, the evidence within the hidden room extends beyond mere documents. There is our father's journal, where he meticulously documented his discoveries regarding your insidious frauds and his profound disillusionment with you. He secreted it there in the fervent hope that the truth would eventually surface. He never intended for you to be the principal heir, yet you manipulated and threatened him into submission." Edward's face contorted into a mask of unbridled fury. "You traitor! You are betraying me for these people, for some common woman and her daughter." "They are not common people, Edward. They embody the truth you so desperately endeavored to bury. They illuminated the path for me when I was hopelessly lost in the pervasive darkness you meticulously crafted. And I shall protect them. The authorities are already en route. They will possess more than sufficient evidence now." The confrontation escalated into an explosive maelstrom. Edward attempted to flee, but Alexander, with a nascent strength he had not realized he possessed, physically restrained him. The police arrived moments later, and Edward was escorted away, his carefully constructed facade of a respectable gentleman finally shattered, irrevocably revealing the villain lurking beneath the polished exterior. The Sterling estate, which had for so long felt like a mausoleum, began to breathe anew. With Edward definitively out of the picture, life within the stately mansion underwent a profound transformation. Alexander offered his most sincere apologies to Sarah and Lily, and they, with grace, forgave him. The truth had finally surfaced, and Sarah's name was thoroughly vindicated. She was no longer merely the housekeeper. She was a woman of unwavering dignity and formidable strength who had valiantly weathered immense adversity. Alexander, for his part, embarked upon a deeply personal journey of healing. He dedicated himself assiduously to rectifying his brother's egregious errors, providing aid to the victims of Edward's extensive financial fraud, and meticulously restoring the Sterling family's reputation, now firmly under his ethical stewardship. Alexander's protracted solitude was gradually replaced by a warmth he had never dared to imagine he would experience again. Lily's buoyant laughter now echoed through the grand corridors, and Sarah's steady presence infused his life with an unexpected peace and profound joy. They spent countless hours conversing, laughing, and sharing simple, cherished moments that, to Alexander, were an invaluable treasure. He found himself irrevocably falling in love with Sarah, captivated not merely by her understated beauty, but by her unyielding integrity, her resilient strength, and the boundless, unconditional love she bore for Lily. One resplendent afternoon, within the meticulously manicured gardens of the Sterling estate, with Lily playing joyfully nearby, Alexander knelt before Sarah. "Sarah, you and Lily have unequivocally brought me back to life. You have taught me the profound meaning of true family, of authentic light. I love you. Will you accept my proposal to become my wife and build a new life with me, with Lily within this estate, that will now, at long last, truly be a home?" Sarah, with tears glistening in her eyes, but a radiant smile gracing her lips, accepted. Their kiss sealed a momentous new beginning, not merely for them, but for the Sterling estate itself, which was finally unshackled from its lingering shadows. Alexander, the once reclusive millionaire, had discovered his true purpose and his profound love, all thanks to the unwavering courage of a housekeeper and the luminous innocence of a child. Justice had been meticulously served, and love had unequivocally prevailed, irrevocably proving that true wealth resided not in material possessions, but in the unbreakable bonds forged and the liberating truths unveiled. This saga reminds us that truth, no matter how assiduously it is concealed, invariably finds its way to the illuminating light, and that inherent kindness and indomitable resilience possess the power to profoundly transform lives, even amidst the most profound shadows. At times, the most unexpected individuals are those who liberate us from ourselves and unveil the true, intrinsic value of life and love. If this journey of justice, profound love, and indomitable triumph has resonated deeply within you, we implore you to like this video, subscribe to our channel for a plethora of additional inspiring narratives, and share your insightful commentary on what course of action you would have taken in Alexander's position. Your esteemed opinion is of paramount importance to us.